This particular workshop is about implementing active learning for student engagement and looking at the role of technology or how technology can help us to better engage students. But the focus is not on the how-to of the tool, it's on the pedagogy behind the use of the tool. Which means that a follow-up on this workshop would be actually to go and have a training on some of the tools that I will be talking about, which are available already at your institution. So before we start, now we have a big group, so we'll have to actually agree on the dynamics of the group. If you have questions and so forth, I'd like to take the questions, the comments as we go. However, if we see that we're a bit running behind schedule, we might need to have the questions at the end of every session when we conclude the session. So we'll see how it goes, okay? Now, basically, I'm here to facilitate the program, which means that a lot of what's going on is really going to be you telling your colleagues about what you currently do and sharing your practices and so forth. I'll tell you a bit about myself. My name is Hamou. I am from Algeria. I lived my entire life outside of my country, but I am from from Algeria. And I live currently in the United Arab Emirates. My background is originally in software engineering. So I have a PhD from Boston University in software engineering. Although I have moved away from actually my discipline. I started my career as any academician, teaching computer science, programming, system analysis and design, and so forth. 22 years ago, so I'm not that young. And basically, I worked at the American University of Sharjah, I worked at Ajman University, and then I moved to the ET College, and then I was the Vice President for Academic Affairs at the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, which is a government university and the first smart university recognized in the United Arab Emirates. And then I started doing a lot of work with the European Training Foundation, with the World Bank, with UNESCO. And I'm an external reviewer, accreditation reviewer for multiple agencies. So I do institutional and program accreditation. In fact, the first time I came to your university, I was on NCAA review team. So I was part of the team who came for your institutional accreditation last March. And that's why I know a bit about your university, and I had the chance to meet with few colleagues during the 5 days we have spent here with my other colleagues. I do accreditation reviews in multiple countries in the region, and now I work for a regional organization that works on capacity building and training. So we basically do a lot of consultancy work and training in the areas of quality assurance and accreditation, leadership development and governance, research, teaching and learning, and so forth. We work with 97 universities, 3 ministries of higher education in 10 different countries. So that really gives me the privilege and the honor to be able to meet lots of great people and learn from a lot of people. In this workshop, I will hopefully learn from you as well, as much as hopefully I will be able to give you something back in return. Now, just to share with you about what we plan to achieve out of this program is that the first thing we're trying to look at is to make sure that we understand as professors and faculty and academic administrators this concept of student centricity. What do we mean by student centricity? What do we mean by active learning? Why is it becoming such of an important thing? I mean, we've always been teaching, and some of the things we're going to be talking about, some of you might argue and say, we've been doing this 20, 25 years ago, but why is the word so much focusing on this concept of active learning and project-based learning and competency-based learning and all of these new pedagogical approaches that are emerging? So we're going to talk about what do we mean by student centricity, what do we mean by active learning, what kind of implication does it have on our teaching and learning, on the way we design our course, on the way we plan our assessment, on the way we provide feedback to our students, right? Then we're going to be talking about how do we ensure that we design courses to promote active learning? And this is something that you have to take into account, and I do understand that in many cases, you are not maybe the people who wrote your course specification document. Somebody else might have done it. But when you want to implement active learning, it's something that you have to think about at the time when you are actually designing your course, when you're articulating your learning outcome, when you're thinking about your teaching strategies, when you're thinking about your content, about your assessment. That's when you start thinking about how am I going to integrate the concept of active learning. It's not, you have a course specification and on the top of it you want to add active learning. It's part of the process. So we will slightly touch upon course design, but in relation to implementing active learning. What are the things we should be doing differently? The other thing we're going to be talking about is the various strategies to promote active learning and student engagement. Yes?
Is it possible, is it right to use understand? It's not measurable.
Well, let me tell you, you're going to say it's like, see, if basically, of course, if we were having an assessment and I was going to measure it through exams and projects and so forth, yes. We usually say don't use the word understand or comprehend because they're subjective, and that basically they can mean different things to different people. If I say, just like the word master, if I say I master English language, somebody might say master means you can speak fluently, you can understand the grammar. Somebody else might say master means that I can communicate only. So obviously, if you were articulating learning outcomes for your courses, and you are basically going thoroughly through the exercise, you would want to stay away from the word understanding, because
These
first,
are learning
they are objectives, generally speaking, but they are not something that we're going to be measuring at the end of a specific. So at this stage, some of it is just a general broad understanding. Okay? The other thing that we're going to be talking about is active learning strategies. So how can we incorporate some of these strategies? We'll talk about some strategies that are independent of technology. Things like jigsaw techniques and fishbowls and role plays and structured debates and case study scenarios. And then we're going to look at basically some of the challenges. Now, obviously, when you talk about active learning, very often I hear people coming up with a lot of challenges, which are real challenges, things that you have to address. So we'll have to try to look at what are these challenges and how can we address them? And then finally we'll talk about, it will be integrated throughout, but we will look at some technological tools that might help you engage students, not just within the classroom, but even outside of the classroom. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. The first thing we're going to look at is this concept. The first session is really about introductions and making sure that everybody is on the same ground and we have a common understanding of what do we mean by these particular things. Now, I want to ask you a question, and obviously I would expect answers from everyone, not for every question, but I'd like you to really engage with me. Now, when you hear the word student-centric, and I think that in some of the mission statements I read in your colleges and departments and institutions, you have been using the word student-centric environment, student-centric instruction, and so forth. What does student-centric mean to you? Please.
This means student-centered education. Is to engage the students in the learning process.
So when you call student-centric, you mean engagements?
Yes.
Student engagement, okay. And who else? I want one answer from men, one from ladies. One from men, one from ladies. Yes, ladies. يلا يلا صح. Yes, go ahead, please. We focus on student needs. Men, yes. Yes, and then you. Yes.
Student-centered environment, it's no longer the teacher, but the teacher becomes the facilitator.
Okay, so it's shifting role of faculty members. Okay. Yes.
I think also students not share the learning process, but also students can share the plan, the objective to set up.
So students being involved in the learning process.
Yes.
In learning process. Ladies? Students being active in their own learning process. Okay? Now, I'll take one more answer. Who wants to? Yes, please.
The critical role of the student.
Shift in student role. So our colleague there said shift in faculty role, and you're saying shift in student role. Now, this, okay, go ahead.
Increase participation.
Increased participation. Yes, we have engagement and we have increased participation. Now, everything that you have said is actually correct when we talk about student centricity. But what does this mean to our teaching? What does this mean to teaching and learning? All these things here, what does it imply? What does it mean? spot on. Student-centric learning is about putting the student in the driving seat, which means that basically we are transforming education from being a push system where the professor pushes the knowledge and information to students to a pull system where the professor role shifts to becoming a facilitator of knowledge and students take more responsibility for their learning and are engaged and involved throughout their learning process. They are capable of reflecting on how they learn, what they learn, how they can improve their learning, and how they can transfer their learning to different situations. So everything that you have said is actually spot on. Now, what does this mean to us as professors? Yes, please. I'll just take it. Sorry?
Think like students.
We have to be able to think like students, yes?
The active environment of the learning process, so nobody will go astray.
Right.
They will concentrate.
Okay, so we need to look at the process through which we engage students and they remain active with us.
Yes.
Right. What else does it? So it means as professors, we probably might not be able to do the 50 minutes lecturing anymore, right? He said, I didn't say anything, he said. Right?
Actually, I'm active all during the whole period of the
Okay.
session.
Okay.
My own.
Okay. So you're going to share with us. Yes, Doctor.
Myself, I'm reacting with the students. Sometimes I get information, some information from them, some knowledge from them. Sometimes they bring some knowledge. I ask them to share it with their colleagues.
So we have very good 2 points that our colleague has mentioned here. One of them is he said he looks at getting feedback from his students. Feedback is not at the end of the semester when the university runs a survey because they have to do it and CAAA asks them to run a student evaluation. Feedback is an ongoing process and a professor should be able to take that feedback and adapt their learning strategies, adapt their assessment on the basis of the feedback that they have actually received. So feedback was the first point. The second point, sir?
The second point that students, if you can say, help each other during the lecture to share the knowledge.
One of the things we do, we try to always do learning. The learning process is always about us and the student. But students value a lot the peer learning process, where students can learn from each other. In fact, as human beings, forget about faculty and professors, and as human beings, we learn more by trying to explain to each other than learning on our own. I'm sure there were all situations where you actually, were unsure about the topic and you started researching it and you started looking, and then it opened up your mind on new things. So peer learning is a very important element of actually supporting student centricity. Now, peer learning requires many techniques, many strategies. It is sometimes challenging to implement. It's not simple. Students are not always familiar with this. But what we're going to talk about is different things we can do to encourage one of these practices. I had a colleague there who wanted to say something.
I want to do that the learning process will depend on the students themselves.
The learning, so students will take
This is why we have
responsibility.
two paths or two ways.
Right.
Now the students
So students will take responsibility for their learning. From the ladies' side.
Yeah, I think also, for professors, they should accept that as the role and get the help, teaching them what are.
So we have an interesting point. You have a bodyguard to go out after that? She said that as professors, we need to understand that our role is going to be changing from being, providers of knowledge and the sole, basically, if you want, body responsible for teaching students to becoming more facilitators of learning. Bless you. Anything else from the ladies' side? One more input from the ladies? Yes. Yes, please, Fadal. We should be able to trust students and empower students.